Well, the Astros have to hope that their luck turns around, but hope is not a plan. That makes you wonder what Jim Crane's thinking. So let's get into that. One of the things that has become an alarming reality of the trajectory of this season is after losing 2-3 from your division rivals and the Mariners, the Astros find themselves 7 back, tied for last with the Angels. It starts making you start to ask some very complicated and hard questions, difficult questions. And one of the national writers has already brought up one of these topics, and that's Ken Rosenthal wrote last week that he thinks the Astros could be surprise sellers at the deadline. I think that would be a surprise to anyone except for those that are actually watching Astros games right now. This is not how any of us, I think, thought this season would play out, and it's still early-ish, but the hour does grow late. Charlie, how much, if the Astros do find themselves selling at the deadline, how deeply do you believe the Astros will be selling? And do you think they can get enough resources back to help them retool in the short term?
To retool and win at the major league level, if you do a full sell-off, no, probably not. But the big question, if this is just going to be a death spiral to where come late July, they decide to sell off. Kyle Tucker's the big one, right? That's their single best asset. And if they were to put every player they had on the auction block, no question about it, Kyle Tucker nets the biggest return. Right? Altuve, 34 years old Monday. Kyle Tucker, 27. Kyle Tucker, 5-tool player. Under team control through next season. So a team acquiring him would have him for 2 playoff races and then obviously be wanting to lock him in long term. Well, you're punching a huge hole in your lineup, your major league roster. You trade a guy like that. But if you're going to shop Tucker, I mean, what's Bregman's value? 0, the way he's playing so far this season. A rental of Alex Bregman? Come on, go get a mule instead. Framber Valdez, if he's healthy for 3 months, there's no way the Astros are going to do a long-term extension with Framber. If he pitches pretty well, he'd have value as a guy under team control through next season. But then what are you going to run out there with a rotation that's depth, helped sink the ship the first month of the season for the Astros? Well, you can trade Framber because you have Hunter Brown and Spencer Arrighetti to throw 400 innings in 2025. So what is Jim Crane thinking? Now, I don't think it's incumbent upon an owner to be out there every day or even every week, right? He's the owner. He's not the general manager. But when you are an owner, especially in good times that you seem to make yourself available, so what's running through his mind? A guy who, from when they built this dynasty phase up, he'd done nothing but win.
Yep.
Jim Crane in business, he's a winner. Hiccups along the way, but overall, a winner. He's built monstrously successful companies. So part of him is probably thinking, well, it's going to work itself out and we're going to win. Right? The window's never going to close because I'm me. But Jim Crane doesn't pitch. Right? He doesn't hit. He's probably helped do real damage to where they are now and going forward when he decided to get more active in the decision-making for the roster. But day to day, he's not watching the minor leaguers and making personnel decisions. So yeah, I'd be very fascinated to know what Jim Crane is actually thinking. I think he's probably rightfully thinking, we ain't dead yet. But part of just, I think, being a smart person is looking what's beyond right in front of your face. You want to be prepared for certain eventualities. The fork in the road, as Yogi Berra said, take it. Well, which path are you going to take if this team is 10 games under 500? Yeah, they play 500 ball the next 3 months, a lot better than the first 6 weeks, but you're out of the race in July if you're there, even if you're not going on to be a 105-loss team, which they paced through the first fifth of the season. And how aggressive, does Jim Crane, who's near 70, would he have the stomach for another complete teardown? And the Astros were at the vanguard of the concept. And the architecture that Jeff Luhnow headed was brilliant. Well, how many other teams have tried to do that since and are either spinning their wheels or, as everyone else started thinking, well, here's how you can build a better mousetrap over time. The Astros decide, okay, we are going to be pits of the world again for 3-4 years because just wait till 2028 gets here. Would Jim Crane have the stomach for that? Would the Astros payroll and fan base and revenues have the stomach for that? I don't know.
I think the one thing he's thinking is he's the guy that likes to make the splash move, remember? And that's why him and James Click maybe didn't see eye to eye so much. Well, how's the Jose Abreu and Hader stuff looking right now? I know it's early with Hader, but I think we know what the Abreu signing was. And with Hader, that's a lot of money and a lot of years for a pitcher, no matter how you cut it there, especially a guy, we've seen it with McCullers. If something goes wrong, you can go years to where that deal really kills you when you commit that much length and money to a contract. So hopefully he's thinking about that. Like maybe being a little more measured at times is the better plan. And maybe, when something's working, don't tinker with it. You win a 2022 World Series and he built you a bullpen. Not a whole lot. It was an incredible bullpen, helped you win a World Series, and then you move on from that guy for whatever the reasons were. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But here we are. So what do? I don't think the answer is listening to Bagwell and Reggie Jackson more and punishing Jeff Bagwell, sending him down to Florida to fix Jose Abreu for leaning him into that signing. What do you got, Brandon?
Well, Charlie, you said Jim Crane. I wanted to hit on something Charlie said. It kind of dovetails off what you're talking about here because, Charlie, you said Jim Crane seems to have done real damage the more he got involved. Now, granted, in fairness, he would argue that his non-involvement may have irreparably damaged the team's reputation because I think his involvement is a response to the sign stealing thing and what he found as maybe, pervasive mismanagement under Lunau and AJ Hinch. But, that aside, looking at the on-field decisions that have been made, Charlie, you talked about the damage, and then Josh, you kind of highlighted two of those glaring ones. And we didn't mention Montero, who had looked okay at the start of the season and then has seemingly regressed over the past couple of games. So, we talk about like what he thinks as far as, what does he think about the trajectory of the team and what will he do with it? Has he learned anything? Do you think he really, when we're talking about what Jim Crane thinks about this entire situation, do you think he takes accountability? Do you believe that he has some skin in the game in some of these poor decisions that have been made?
Well, if not, then hubris is part of why an Astros demise could be upon us. I always like to include on this, fall off was inevitable. Right? They were nowhere close to being a great team anymore last year. So if that was the start of the downward slope, these things happen. No runs last forever, but if you hasten your own fall off, when James Click was hired, it was to go, if anything, even more analytical and add the economization mentality of Click coming from the Rays and the think tank and overachieving that they perform there on a shoestring budget year in, year out. And you win a World Series, and because of personality conflicts, whatever else, you move on. And the brain drain that I've referred to here, the number of people that have left the Astros front office post Jeff Luhnow, it is a huge number. And the poster guys for it are Elias and Medal doing what they're doing with the Orioles, right? Astros 2.0, look to them. Some of it, no doubt, just misfortune. If I were Jim Crane, I'd be saying, yeah, this book is lousy so far, but there's 162 pages. Right? We're 34 pages in. So we're in chapter 2, chapter 3 of a 10-chapter book. So, yeah, sharpen your swords and your barbs for me. Let's see where we are at the end. And he who laughs last and that kind of stuff. But if Jim Crane does not realize that his organization is in markedly worse condition than where it was during the heyday of his glorious platinum era, well, then it does start at the top. And in this case, it would mean nodding off, thinking you are bulletproof. The Midas touch doesn't turn everything into gold forever.
No, and if he does see it that way, and is he gonna, it wasn't something I did? Is he gonna look for a fall guy, a Espada, somebody to to take the blame for what's happening this year. Dana Brown, he clearly the brain trust, he's cool with those guys, at least seemingly. We haven't heard anything otherwise, but on the field, it's Espada and it's, Dana Brown to some extent is the GM, but then that looks bad on him if he hires this GM and then gets rid of him right away. But then again, he moved on from Click after winning a World Series. So I just wonder, because we talked about this in previous podcasts, you can't fire the whole team. And if he wants some accountability, where's it going to be? But I just, in Espada, it's like, how much can he really do just juggling the lineup? These guys got to come through and perform. And if there is one juggle in the lineup, we mentioned it before here too, move Bregman down until he gets hot. If he starts off slow every year, then maybe don't put him in the most important spots in the lineup where he gets the most at bats until he comes around. But they don't seem willing to do that, where other guys, they move them all over the batting order. I know Bregman moves 2 to 4 and, up there towards the top, up or down a spot or two. But, you don't ever see Bregman hitting 7th or anything like that. So you just wonder, why is that the line they draw in the sand?
Yeah, I guess the counter in part would be, well, who do we have to move up?
Right.
Jeremy Pena would be answer
there you
number
go.
one to that. Espada after the game Sunday saying that, well, he's hit so well. He's settled in there. We think he's comfortable in that 5 or 6 spot. Yeah, well, do you want him coming up 25% fewer plate appearances, 25%? That Bregman batting 2nd, 3rd, 4th comes up more than a guy batting 5th or 6th. And if you move Pena up to the 2 spot, or even just that, okay, Jordan's going to come around. So just intrinsically, Jordan, Altuve, Tucker, they're better than Pena. So, okay, bat Pena cleanup, drop Bregman to 5th, something to get your worst offensive player up less frequently. And they want to keep going to that back of the baseball card stuff. And this is where we can, hoist them on their own petard on Josh Hader. If they'd actually looked, Bagwell, Dana Brown, anyone else who has baseball cards, if they'd actually looked at the back of Josh Hader's baseball card, perhaps they'd have been aware before going 5 years, $95 million for a guy who throws 60 innings per year, right? Leave aside the vagary of bullpen pitchers year to year, durability issues of pitchers, right? Hader at his best is giving you 65 innings, $19 million per year for that as asset allocation. When Josh Hader in 2019 gave up 15 home runs in 75 innings. In the short 2020 season, he was mediocre at best. 2021, he was awesome. 2022, he was trash. 2023, he was awesome. So if you want to play the every other year game, well, 2024 was this isn't going to be a great one for old Josh. But leaving that aside, that he was Billy Wagner 2.0, that this is the flame-throwing lefty who year in, year out has just been incredible. That was absolute bull dinky. And they're paying a price for it. The start of $95 million of price.
Well, to borrow a phrase, Jim Crane is a riddle wrapped in an enigma. He's been the best Houston sports owner, and that's not even really arguable. But sports is a what have you done for me lately industry. And right now, the the poor decision making is starting to add up. And with all of the shuffling and the mysterious men behind closed doors making the decisions, the one face that has been the constant is that of Jim Crane. So if you are someone who says, in Jim Crane we trust, well, you've got ammo because there is track record there.
And even if this season is ultimately destined for the dumper, at the end of it, name all the Major League Baseball franchises, or pick them all as a fan, whose last 8 years would you rather have had than the Houston Astros? Right? If the Braves win the World Series this year, if the Dodgers win the World Series this year, the Red Sox, maybe not even the Red Sox, 3 last place finishes in 4 years. Right? The Braves or the Dodgers win the World Series, the answer becomes the Braves or the Dodgers. Otherwise, even including this year, if it is a stink bomb start to finish, right? Eras end, dynasties end. How do you retool to build back up if that's what they're forced to do? But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater as we just keep firing off expressions today.
Indeed. Well, I think we'll leave it there. And that's my famous expression. That's it for this episode of Stone Cold Stros. If you listen on podcasts and you enjoy the show, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating. Charlie, Josh, and I will be back with you next week, but you don't have to wait that long to get to your Houston Sports Fix. All you have to do is subscribe on YouTube, on the Sports Map Houston channel and the Sports Map Texans channel. We actually had a really good, fun discussion last week without Josh. Hopefully we can wrangle him back into a Texans discussion real soon. But if you haven't watched that episode, we invite you to go check that out right now on the Sports Map Texans channel. And as always, on this channel, go Stros.